I'm Rebecca Daniels, 28, and I never thought a name tag would change my life. Walking into my dad's 60th birthday party, I clutched my carefully chosen gift, searching for my seat among familiar faces. That's when I saw it. My place card didn't say Rebecca like everyone else's had their names. Mine read the disappointment. My stepmom Victoria glanced over, laughing coldly. Well, it's true. Something inside me finally broke. I stood up, clinked my glass for attention, and said clearly, I'd like to make a toast to the last time you'll ever see me. Dad choked on his drink as I walked out, leaving behind one final message he wouldn't soon forget. Before I dive deeper into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, and if my story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support the channel. Now, let me take you back to understand how things got to this breaking point. My childhood memories with my dad, Thomas Daniels, were once filled with warmth and adventure. He was my hero, the man who taught me to bait a hook during our weekend fishing trips at Lake Wilson, who stayed up until midnight helping me perfect science fair projects, and who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character until I was almost too old for it to be cool. We were inseparable, a team that my mother Catherine lovingly called the dynamic duo. Mom was the glue that held our family together, her gentle wisdom balancing Dad's playful energy. She was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer when I was 14, and our world tilted on its axis. For 2 years, our lives revolved around hospital visits, treatment schedules, and hoping against hope. I watched my vibrant mother fade away, and with her, pieces of my father disappeared too. I was 16 when she passed away on a rainy Tuesday morning in April. Dad broke in ways I couldn't fix. The man who once told animated stories at dinner now sat in silence, staring at Mom's empty chair. I tried to reach him through his grief, cooking dinners he didn't eat, suggesting fishing trips he wouldn't take. I was grieving too, but somehow, I became the adult in our relationship, trying desperately to hold what remained of our family together. 6 months after Mom died, Dad started attending a grief support group at the community center. That's where he met Victoria Pierce. She was a widow with a daughter named Melissa, who was 2 years younger than me. When Dad first brought Victoria home for dinner, she seemed kind. She complimented the lasagna I'd made from Mom's recipe and asked thoughtful questions about my college plans. I was relieved to see Dad smiling again, even if those smiles didn't quite reach his eyes. Their relationship progressed quickly. Too quickly. Just 1 year after Mom's death, they were married in a small ceremony. I wore a blue dress and forced a smile for the photos, telling myself that Dad deserved happiness. I truly believed Victoria might help heal our broken family. I couldn't have been more wrong. Victoria's warmth vanished almost immediately after the wedding. It started with small things. Family movie nights suddenly rescheduled when I was already on my way over. Messages I left for Dad mysteriously never reaching him. "Oh, I must have forgotten to tell him you called," she would say with a thin smile that never touched her eyes. My choice to study computer science at university became a constant target. Such a masculine field, Victoria would comment at family gatherings. Wouldn't you be happier in something more suitable? When I landed an internship at a prestigious tech company, she merely raised an eyebrow and changed the subject to Melissa's part-time job at a local boutique, somehow making it sound more impressive than my achievement. My appearance became another battlefield. "Oh, honey, that outfit is brave," she would say, or, "Have you considered doing something different with your hair? Something more flattering." Each comment delivered with a smile and in front of others so I couldn't respond without seeming overly sensitive. Meanwhile, Melissa could do no wrong. She was naturally beautiful, socially gifted, and just so considerate according to Victoria, who made sure Dad heard every compliment about her daughter and every subtle criticism about me. Despite the growing tension at home, I threw myself into my education. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in computer science, an achievement that had me bursting with pride. Dad had promised to be there, front row. The night before graduation, I received a text. Something came up. "Can't make it tomorrow. Sorry." I later learned Victoria had surprised him with an impromptu vacation to celebrate their anniversary, which was actually 3 weeks away. I built my career carefully, landing a position as a cybersecurity specialist at a financial technology firm. Each promotion and accomplishment felt hollow without my father's recognition. I'd call to share good news, and he would listen distractedly before Victoria inevitably needed him for something urgent. The past decade has been an exercise in persistence. I've sent birthday cards, made holiday appearances, and attempted countless dinners and coffees, trying to reconnect with a father I once knew. 2 months ago, I called to tell him about my promotion to senior security architect. He said he was proud but seemed confused about what I was talking about. When I reminded him I'd told him about the potential promotion during our last call, he apologized and said he must have forgotten. Later, Aunt Eleanor mentioned that Victoria had told everyone I was too busy with work for family these days. I might have continued this painful dance indefinitely if not for what I discovered last month. Dad had asked me to help him with a computer issue, while Victoria was at her book club. As I was fixing his email settings, a notification from his bank appeared. Curious, I clicked on it and found myself looking at his account summary. Large transfers to an unfamiliar account caught my attention. Using my cybersecurity skills, I dug deeper and found a pattern of suspicious transfers from Dad's retirement account to an offshore account. All authorized by Victoria. My father had worked for 35 years as an engineer, saving carefully for a retirement that Victoria appeared to be systematically draining. I copied the records, unsure what to do with this information, but knowing I needed to protect him somehow. I was still processing this discovery when the invitation to Dad's 60th birthday party arrived in my mailbox. Handwritten by Victoria, of course. I spent weeks searching for the perfect birthday gift for Dad. After visiting countless antique stores and specialty shops, I finally found it, a vintage Baldwin fishing lure from the 1970s, the exact brand and model Dad had lost on our last fishing trip together before Mom got sick. He had talked about that lure for years, how it was the one that got away. I paid more than I should have, but seeing his face when he opened it would be worth every penny. The morning of the party, I woke up early and spent 3 hours preparing Mom's famous potato salad and Dad's favorite chocolate pecan pie. The recipes were worn and stained, preserved in Mom's handwriting in the recipe box I'd kept after she passed. As I stirred and measured, I could almost hear her voice guiding me. Cooking is love made visible, she used to say. I dressed carefully in a navy blue dress that Mom had always said brought out my eyes, paired with the pearl earrings Dad had given me for my college graduation. Standing in front of the mirror, I gave myself a pep talk. Today is about Dad. Stay positive. Don't let Victoria get to you. Family harmony for one day. You can do this. The drive to their suburban home took 40 minutes, each mile increasing the knot in my stomach. Their house was nothing like the modest home I'd grown up in. After marrying Victoria, Dad had sold our family home and moved into her sprawling colonial in the most expensive neighborhood in town. I parked my sensible sedan between a Mercedes and a BMW, already feeling out of place. Victoria answered the door in a designer dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled. "Rebecca," she said, her tone suggesting she was addressing a delivery person rather than family. "You're early." I was exactly on time, but I bit my tongue. "Happy to help set up," I offered, holding out the containers of food. "Oh, we have the catering handled," she said dismissively, but took the containers. "You can put your gift with the others." I stepped into the foyer and immediately noticed how Victoria warmly greeted another arriving guest over my shoulder, her voice transforming into a sing-song welcome that had never been directed at me. The living room and extending patio had been transformed with elegant decorations, a bar staffed by a professional bartender, and catering staff circulating with trays of appetizers. At least 50 people milled about, many I didn't recognize. Dad was across the room, surrounded by what appeared to be work colleagues. "Rebecca, you've made it." My stepsister Melissa appeared, champagne flute in hand. At 26, she looked like a younger version of Victoria, from her highlighted hair to her practiced smile. "Mom has outdone herself with this party, hasn't she? She spent weeks planning every detail." Dad is so lucky to have her. I nodded politely, scanning the room for a friendly face. Aunt Eleanor caught my eye from across the room and gave me a sympathetic smile. At least one ally was present. I noticed my food containers being carried toward the kitchen rather than to the elaborate spread on the dining table. Victoria emerged from the kitchen, intercepting me before I could reach Dad. "Thomas is catching up with his golf friends right now," she said. "Why don't you mingle? There's a seat card for you over there." She gestured vaguely toward the far corner of the room. After greeting a few family members, I made my way to the seating area to find my place. Round tables were set up beautifully, each place marked with an elegant name card. I circled the perimeter tables, looking for my name. Finally, at the table furthest from where Dad was seated, I found my assigned seat. But instead of Rebecca written in the same calligraphy as the other cards, mine simply read, "The Disappointment." I stared at it, certain there must be some mistake. Perhaps a cruel joke by a catering staff member? But the cardstock matched all the others, the calligraphy identical. This was intentional. "That's your seat, right?" A woman I didn't recognize glanced at the card, then at me, her expression shifting from curiosity to discomfort. Others at the table began to notice. Awkward glances exchanged. I picked up the card, my hand trembling slightly. That's when I heard Victoria's laugh behind me. I turned to find her watching me, Melissa at her side. "Well, it's true," Victoria said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You've never lived up to your potential. Your father had such high hopes." I looked past her to where Dad stood, now aware of the tension but making no move to intervene. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, taking a long sip of his drink. His silence hurt more than Victoria's words ever could. In that moment, every slight, every missed event, every unanswered call of the past decade crystallized into perfect clarity. I had been fighting for a relationship with someone who wouldn't even defend me in the most basic way. The revelation wasn't anger, but a profound sadness that washed over me like a wave. I set down the name card, my decision made with surprising calm. I reached for a water glass and a fork, tapping them together with enough force to create a clear ringing sound. Conversations halted as attention turned toward me. "I'd like to make a toast," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. The room fell completely silent. Victoria's smug expression remained, clearly expecting me to slink away embarrassed. "To the last time you'll ever see me," I continued, looking directly at my father. "I hope it was worth it." Dad choked on his drink, his face flushing. Victoria's expression shifted from smugness to surprise, then concern as she realized this wasn't following her script. Without another word, I set down my glass, picked up my purse, and walked calmly toward the door. No one tried to stop me. No one called my name. The silence followed me out into the warm evening air, broken only by the sound of my car door closing. Only I knew what I had left behind. Before leaving the party, I had made a brief detour to Dad's study, a room Victoria rarely entered due to her disinterest in his engineering books and memorabilia. There, on his desk, I placed a small silver USB drive labeled simply Truth. The contents of that drive would shatter the careful illusion Victoria had constructed. I had compiled the evidence methodically, my cybersecurity training proving useful outside of work. The USB contained screenshots of text messages between Victoria and someone saved at her phone as Jay, scheduling meetings at the Lakeside Hotel on days she claimed to be at spa retreats or visiting her sister. I had obtained these from the cloud backup of her phone, which she had unknowingly linked to Dad's shared Apple account. Also included were the financial records showing systematic transfers from Dad's retirement accounts to offshore holdings, along with documentation of credit cards opened in his name that he knew nothing about. I had tracked suspicious purchases of jewelry and designer items that never appeared in their home. Most damning were the photos. Using the location data from her social media posts that claimed she was at charity functions, I had visited the hotel she was actually at and, from a discreet distance, captured photos of Victoria with her companion, a man significantly younger than Dad. Their body language left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. The final item on the drive was a letter explaining everything I had endured over the years, detailing specific instances when Victoria had deliberately sabotaged my relationship with Dad. I ended it with a simple statement: I deserved better from you, Dad. So did Mom's memory. As I drove away from the house, tears streamed down my face, but they were accompanied by an unexpected feeling of liberation. 10 years of trying to earn love from people who had no intention of giving it were finally over. I had set down a burden I didn't realize was crushing me. I call my best friend Allison from the car. Can I crash at your place tonight? My voice cracked despite my attempts to sound composed. Rebecca? What happened? Allison's concern was immediate. I'll explain when I get there. I can't go home right now. Of course. I'll make up the guest room. Do you need anything? Just a friend who actually cares if I exist. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on Allison's couch, recounting the events of the evening while she listened in growing outrage. She did what? And your dad just stood there? Allison paced the living room. That's it. They're both dead to me. My phone had been buzzing continuously since I left the party. I finally turned it off after the 15th call from Dad and various family members. What did you leave behind? Allison asked after I mentioned the USB drive. The truth. And a choice. He can keep pretending everything is fine while his wife ruins his life, or he can wake up and see what's been happening. That night, in the safety of Allison's guest room, the emotional armor I had maintained at the party finally cracked. I sobbed into the pillow, mourning not just the relationship I'd lost with my father, but the one I had never truly had since Mom died. I cried for the 16-year-old girl who had needed her father during the worst time of her life and found herself alone instead. Morning brought sunlight through unfamiliar curtains and the disorienting moment of forgetting, then remembering why I wasn't in my own apartment. I turned on my phone to find 37 missed calls, 22 voicemails, and numerous text messages. Most were from Dad, a few from Aunt Eleanor, and surprisingly, several from Melissa. I listened to one voicemail from Dad. Rebecca, please call me back. I don't understand what happened. We need to talk. His voice sounded confused rather than concerned, which only reinforced my decision. The call I did answer came from my grandmother Margaret, Mom's mother, who had maintained a distant but cordial relationship with Dad after Victoria entered the picture. Rebecca, honey, are you safe? Her voice was tight with worry. I'm fine, Grandma. I'm at Allison's. Eleanor called me. She said something happened at the party, and you left suddenly. Want to tell me what's going on? I gave her the abbreviated version, my throat tightening as I described the name Card. That woman, Grandma Margaret hissed. I never understood what Thomas saw in her. Your mother would be heartbroken. I think I'm done, Grandma. I can't keep trying with someone who won't try back. Sometimes walking away is the only way forward, sweetheart. Your grandfather and I are here for you, whatever you need. Later that afternoon, Aunt Eleanor appeared at Allison's door with a bag of my favorite comfort foods and a fierce hug. I saw what happened, she said as we sat at Allison's kitchen table. I wanted to follow you out, but I thought you might need space. Did Dad find the USB drive? I asked. I don't know. After you left, Victoria tried to act like nothing had happened, but people were talking. I overheard someone asking if the disappointment was some kind of inside joke. Eleanor shook her head. I never liked her, you know. From the first time Thomas brought her home, something felt off. Why didn't you say anything? I did once. Thomas accused me of being jealous and not wanting him to be happy after Catherine died. We didn't speak for months afterward. I decided staying in his life to keep an eye on things was more important than being right. I nodded, understanding her impossible position. What are you going to do now? She asked. I've already emailed my boss for emergency vacation time. I'm thinking of visiting Julia in Seattle for a while. Julia was my college roommate who had been inviting me to visit for years. Running away won't solve anything, Rebecca. I'm not running away. I'm giving myself space to figure out what I want my life to look like without the constant disappointment of trying to connect with Dad. Eleanor couldn't argue with that. The next few days were a blur of practical arrangements. My team leader Frank was understanding about my sudden need for time off. Family emergency? He asked when I called to follow up on my email request. Something like that. I might need to work remotely for a while. After that security protocol overhaul you completed last month, you could ask for the moon.
Take the time you need.
Just keep your laptop handy in case we have questions only you can answer. I set up an email autoresponder explaining my extended absence and packed enough for a 2-week stay, unsure when I'd return to my apartment. Before leaving town, I wrote a brief email to Dad. I need time and space. Please respect that. The USB drive explains everything. I hesitated before hitting send, wondering if I was making the right choice. In the end, I sent it, turned my phone to airplane mode, and started the long drive to Seattle, a strange mix of grief, relief, and uncertainty, my only companions. While I was driving across state lines toward temporary sanctuary, a different kind of chaos was unfolding at my father's house. According to Aunt Eleanor, who pieced together accounts from various family members, Dad retreated to his study shortly after the party ended. Whether by design or accident, he noticed the silver USB drive on his desk. Initially assuming it was work-related, he plugged it into his computer, without a second thought. What he found changed everything. Aunt Eleanor described his face as ashen when he emerged from the study 2 hours later. Victoria was in their bedroom, removing her jewelry from the party. "We need to talk," he said from the doorway. "About Rebecca's little tantrum?" "I agree. So dramatic, that girl. Always has been."
"No. About these."
He held up printouts of her text messages with her lover, financial records showing the systematic draining of his accounts, and photos that left no doubt about her infidelity. Victoria's attempts to explain were predictably desperate. The man in the photos was just a friend, helping her plan a surprise for Dad's retirement. The financial transfers were temporary, and she was planning to put it all back. The text messages were taken out of context. Dad, the rational engineer, had numbered each page of evidence and highlighted the dates and amounts. There was no talking her way out of the methodical documentation. The confrontation escalated until Victoria was screaming accusations about Dad being a cold, emotionless robot who had driven her to seek comfort elsewhere. In her rage, she knocked over a vase Catherine had painted, shattering it beyond repair. The symbolic destruction of one of the few remaining pieces of Mom was too much for Dad. "Get out," he said quietly. "This is MY house."
Victoria shrieked.
"Actually, it's our house, purchased with MY retirement funds that you've been systematically stealing. Get out, or I call the police and show them these financial records." Victoria left to stay with her sister, but not before threatening to destroy him if he proceeded with any legal action against her. The stress of the confrontation, combined with the shock of discovering Victoria's betrayal and my departure, triggered concerning symptoms in Dad. Chest pains and dizziness sent him to the emergency room the following morning. It wasn't a heart attack, but the doctor warned him about stress-induced hypertension that could lead to one, if not addressed. News of the dramatic split traveled quickly through the family. People took sides, with Victoria calling everyone who would listen to spin her version of events. She even called my workplace, asking to speak to my supervisor about concerns regarding Rebecca's mental health. Thankfully, our HR department had strict privacy policies and refused to discuss my employment or forward her call. I learned about Dad's health scare 3 days into my stay with Julia in Seattle. Aunt Eleanor called, careful to present the facts without pressure. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty or to rush back," she clarified. "You have every right to take the space you need. I just thought you should know." "Is he okay?" I asked, surprised by how much I still care despite everything.
"Physically, yes."
The doctor gave him medication for his blood pressure and strict orders to reduce stress. "Emotionally," she sighed. "He's a mess, Rebecca. Finding out about Victoria's betrayal, losing you, all at once." I felt a twinge of guilt, quickly replaced by indignation. He didn't lose me. He stood by for years while Victoria systematically pushed me out of his life. He made choices. "Yes, he did," Eleanor agreed, surprising me. "Bad ones. I'm not defending him. I'm just giving you information so you can make your own choices with complete awareness." The conversation left me conflicted. Part of me wanted to maintain the clean break I'd made. Another part worried about Dad's health and wondered if I should check on him, if only to make sure he was taking care of himself. Before I could decide, Melissa's name appeared in my inbox with the subject line, "How could you do this to our family?" The email was exactly what I expected. Accusations of selfishness, claims that I had always been jealous of her relationship with her mother, and dramatic statements about how I had destroyed our family with lies. She ended with a threat that I would regret this vindictive attack on her mother. I deleted it without responding. More surprising was the email that arrived the next day from Gerald Fisher, Dad's best friend since college and my honorary uncle. "Rebecca," it began, "I've known you since you were in diapers, so I hope you'll forgive my directness. I was at Thomas's birthday party and saw what happened. Victoria crossed a line that should never be crossed, and your father failed you by not stepping in. You have every right to be hurt and angry. What you may not know is that I witnessed Victoria with another man at the Lakeside Hotel 6 months ago. I told Thomas what I saw, but Victoria convinced him I was mistaken. She's been manipulating him for years, and I've watched helplessly as he pulled away from you and other people who truly care about him. I'm not asking you to forgive him right away. I'm just asking you to remember that the man who taught you to fish and stayed up all night working on science projects is still in there somewhere, buried under years of Victoria's influence. When you're ready, I hope you'll give him a chance to find his way back to being that father again." Gerald's email hit me harder than Melissa's accusations or Eleanor's updates about Dad's health. It forced me to confront the complexity of the situation, the possibility that Dad had been as much Victoria's victim as I had, albeit in different ways. I started therapy the following week, finding a counselor in Seattle who specialized in family trauma. Dr. Samantha Nelson listened without judgment as I unloaded a decade of painful history. "It sounds like you've been carrying the emotional labor in your relationship with your father for a very long time," she observed during our second session. "Someone had to," I replied. "After Mom died, he just checked out. And now you've checked out. How does that feel?"
Terrifying.
"And necessary.
And sad.
And liberating. All at once." Dr. Nelson nodded. "All of those feelings can coexist. You're mourning the relationship you wanted but never had, while also setting boundaries to protect yourself from further hurt. Both are valid." Those sessions became my anchor as I navigated this new territory. I found a short-term rental apartment in Seattle, and my company approved an extended remote work arrangement. Julia helped me furnish the place with secondhand finds, creating a space that felt like a fresh start. During my third week away, I received my first direct message from Dad since the party. No accusations, no defensiveness, just 5 simple words. "I need to talk to you." I stared at those words on my screen for a long time, my finger hovering over the delete button. Instead, I closed my laptop without responding, needing more time to decide what, if anything, I wanted to say to the man who had broken my heart repeatedly over the past decade. After 5 weeks of distance and intensive therapy, I finally replied to my father's message. "I'm willing to meet. Neutral location only." We agreed on a coffee shop in my hometown, a place neither of us had particular history with. I drove back the night before, staying with Allison rather than getting a hotel. The familiarity of her guest room provided some comfort as I rehearsed what I wanted to say, what boundaries I needed to establish. "Do you want me to come with you?" Allison offered over breakfast. "I could sit at another table, just be there for moral support. Would you mind? Just knowing you're there would help." "Of course. That's what best friends are for. Plus, I want to give your dad my death glare at least once." I spent an hour choosing my outfit, wanting to project confidence and composure. I settled on black slacks, a blue blouse, and the pearl earrings Mom had left me. Professional, put together, but not trying too hard. We arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, so I could choose a table near the exit. Allison positioned herself across the room, laptop open as if working but angled to keep us in view. Dad arrived exactly on time, a punctuality he had instilled in me since childhood. The sight of him shocked me. In just over a month, he seemed to have aged years. Thinner, with deeper lines around his eyes and mouth, he moved with a new hesitancy that made my chest tighten despite my resolve to stay emotionally detached. He spotted me and paused, uncertainty crossing his face before he approached. I didn't stand to hug him, as I once would have. "Rebecca," he said, his voice rough. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. Would you like coffee?" I asked, gesturing to the counter. Keeping things transactional felt safer. "Already ordered online. Should be ready." He glanced toward the pickup area, where a barista was indeed calling his name. We sat in awkward silence until he returned with his black coffee, a habit unchanged since I was a child. "How have you been?" he asked, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "Surviving," I answered honestly. "Working remotely from Seattle for now." "Seattle. That's where Julia lives, right? Your roommate from college?" I was surprised he remembered. "Yes." More silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words.
"Rebecca, I'm sorry."
He finally looked directly at me. "I failed you. Not just at the party, but for years." I had imagined this conversation countless times, but his immediate apology caught me off guard. I had expected defensiveness, excuses, maybe even blame. "Yes, you did," I acknowledged, neither accepting his apology nor rejecting it outright. "I found the USB drive." He twisted his coffee cup slowly. "I had no idea Victoria was doing those things." "Which things specifically? Stealing your money? Cheating on you? Or systematically destroying our relationship?" "Because I tried to tell you about that last one many times." He flinched at my directness, but didn't deny it. "All of it. I was blind. Or maybe I chose not to see. After your mother died, I was so lost. Victoria seemed to know exactly what I needed, how to make decisions when I couldn't. I handed over control bit by bit until I didn't know how to take it back." "That explains your relationship with her, not why you allowed her to come between us." "It doesn't excuse anything," he agreed. "But every time you and Victoria had a disagreement, she would explain afterward how you misunderstood her intentions, how you were resistant to accepting her because you were still grieving your mother. It made sense at the time. I convinced myself you needed time to adjust. 10 years is a long adjustment period, Dad." "I know." His voice cracked slightly. By the time I realized things weren't improving, we had established patterns that seemed impossible to break. I told myself at least we were all trying, that family was messy sometimes. "I was trying. You were acquiescing. There's a difference." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I took the path of least resistance. It was easier to believe Victoria's explanations than to confront the possibility that I was losing my relationship with my daughter." "Do you know what it means to be someone's disappointment, Dad?" I asked, the question that had been burning inside me since the party. "It means no matter what you achieve or how hard you try, you'll never be good enough. Do you have any idea how many times I've felt that way with you? I never thought of you as a disappointment, Rebecca. Never. Actions speak louder than words. You missed my college graduation for a vacation Victoria planned. You forgot my promotion.
Twice.
You sat silently while your wife labeled me the disappointment at your birthday party." "I know." His shoulders slumped. "After you left, after I found the evidence, I've been thinking about every moment I let you down. There are so many. Too many. What do you want from me now, Dad? Forgiveness? A clean slate. I want a chance to be the father you deserve. I've filed for divorce." This news, delivered quietly, stunned me into silence. Despite the evidence I'd provided, I hadn't been certain he would actually leave Victoria. "Victoria moved out the day after the party," he continued. "I've frozen the accounts she was transferring money from and hired a forensic accountant to track what's already gone. My lawyer thinks we can recover most of it. I'm not coming back just because you're divorcing her," I said, needing him to understand this wasn't a simple fix. "I know that. I'm not asking you to come back at all. I'm asking for a chance to earn your trust again, whatever that looks like for you. Phone calls, emails, occasional coffee. I'll take anything you're willing to give." As we sat there, the enormity of the situation weighing between us, the bell above the coffee shop door jingled. I glanced up automatically and froze. Victoria stood in the doorway, scanning the room until her eyes locked on our table. Her perfectly maintained appearance couldn't hide the fury in her expression as she marched toward us. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she spat. Father and daughter reunited after she destroyed our family with her lies. Dad stood immediately, positioning himself slightly in front of me. "Victoria, this is a private conversation. You need to leave." "Private? Like the private information your daughter illegally accessed to create her little fiction about me?" Victoria's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby tables. "Do you know what she did as a crime? Computer fraud, invasion of privacy, defamation." "The only fraud here is you," I said, standing as well. "Every record on that drive can be verified independently." "You manipulated those records," Victoria hissed. "You've always been jealous of my relationship with your father, always trying to come between us." "That's enough," Dad said, his voice carrying an authority I hadn't heard in years. "Rebecca didn't come between us. You did, with your lies and manipulation." Victoria's strategy shifted instantly, tears filling her eyes. "Thomas, how can you believe these terrible things about me? After everything we've been through together? I love you. I've only ever wanted what's best for our family." "Our family?" I couldn't help but laugh incredulously. "You've spent 10 years making sure I wasn't part of that family." "You see?" Victoria turned to Dad. "This is exactly the kind of dramatic exaggeration I've been dealing with. She twists everything." I noticed Allison moving closer, ready to intervene if needed. Other customers were openly watching now, some with phones partially raised. "Victoria," Dad said firmly, "I've seen the bank records. I've seen the photos. I've read the texts. There's no explanation that changes what you did." Victoria's tears vanished as quickly as they had appeared, replaced by cold calculation.
Fine.
"You want to believe your precious daughter over your wife? Let me tell you something about Daddy's little girl." She turned to me with a vicious smile. "Did she tell you why your mother really got sick? How your father's company dumped chemicals for years, chemicals linked to the exact type of cancer that killed Catherine?" The accusation hung in the air like poison. Dad went completely still beside me. "That's a lie," he whispered. "Is it? You worked in quality control. You signed off on those disposal procedures. You told me yourself you wondered if there was a connection, if maybe you were somehow responsible for her illness." I looked at Dad, shocked not by Victoria's accusation, but by the naked guilt on his face. This was clearly a private fear he had shared with her, a vulnerability she was now weaponizing in public. "My mother had a genetic predisposition to breast cancer," I said clearly, addressing not just Victoria, but the watching crowd. 3 women in her family had it. Dad's company had nothing to do with it. "That's what he needs to believe," Victoria sneered. "Ask him if he's ever really forgiven himself." I looked at my father, seeing the shame and pain Victoria's words had inflicted. In that moment, something shifted inside me. Whatever Dad's failings as a father, whatever mistakes he had made, he didn't deserve this cruel public flaying of his private grief. "Dad is many things," I said, stepping forward to stand beside him rather than behind him. "He's stubborn, conflict avoidant, and sometimes painfully oblivious to emotional undercurrents. But he's also brilliant, principled, and incapable of the kind of willful negligence you're describing. He would never have knowingly contributed to environmental contamination, and he certainly doesn't bear responsibility for Mom's cancer." Victoria hadn't expected me to defend him. Her momentary confusion gave Dad time to find his voice again. "I shared that fear with you during our most intimate conversations," he said quietly. "In our bed, in the dark, when I felt safe to express my irrational guilt about Catherine's death. And you saved it to use as a weapon. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." Victoria glanced around, realizing she had lost her audience. The coffee shop patrons were watching with expressions ranging from disgust to secondhand embarrassment. "You'll regret this," she said, gathering her designer purse. "Both of you. I'm entitled to half of everything, Thomas. By the time my lawyers are done, you'll be living in a studio apartment eating ramen noodles." Probably still better than living with you, I replied. She stormed out, the bell jangling violently behind her. In the awkward silence that followed, Dad and I slowly sat back down. Across the room, Allison gave me a thumbs up and returned to her table, still watching protectively. Thank you, Dad said finally.
For what you said. You didn't have to defend me.
I didn't do it for you, I said honestly. I did it because it was true, and because she doesn't get to use Mom's memory that way. He nodded, understanding. Dad, did you really blame yourself for Mom's cancer? His eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. Sometimes, irrational as it was. The company I worked for had an impeccable environmental record, but when the person you love most in the world is dying and you can't do anything to stop it, your mind looks for reasons, for someone to blame, even if it's yourself. Mom wouldn't have wanted that. I know. He wiped his eyes with a napkin. Catherine was always more sensible than me. The mention of Mom created a moment of connection between us, a shared understanding of what we had both lost. I can't promise anything, Dad, I said finally. I need time.
I need to see consistent change.
I need to know that you're going to put in the work this time, not just when it's convenient or when there's a crisis. I understand. He hesitated before adding, would it be okay if I called you next Sunday? Just to check in. No pressure for more than that right now. I considered his request, weighing it against Dr. Nelson's advice about establishing clear boundaries while leaving room for growth. Sunday would be fine. Between 2 and 4. I have plans in the evening. He nodded, relief visible on his face. 2 to 4 on Sunday. I'll put it in my calendar. As we prepared to leave, an unexpected wave of emotion hit me. Despite everything, this man was my father, the person who had taught me to ride a bike, who had built me a treehouse, who had loved my mother so deeply that losing her had broken something fundamental inside him. Dad, I said impulsively, take care of your health, okay? Aunt Eleanor mentioned your blood pressure. Make sure you're following doctor's orders. His eyes filled again, this time with something that looked like hope. I will. I promise. We walked out of the coffee shop separately, heading to our respective cars. No hugs, no declarations of forgiveness or love. Just a small, fragile beginning. A Sunday phone call between 2 and 4. It wasn't much, but it was something neither of us had had in a very long time, an honest connection built on truth rather than avoidance. 2 weeks after our coffee shop confrontation, Aunt Eleanor called to ask a favor. Your father is moving into a new apartment this weekend. He could use some help, and I thought you might want to be involved. Victoria got the house? I asked, surprised given the evidence of her financial misconduct. No, nothing's been settled legally yet. Thomas just couldn't stand being there anymore.
Too many memories, he said.
He found a 2-bedroom place downtown near the river. I hesitated, weighing the request against my need for emotional distance. What kind of help does he need? Just sorting, deciding what to take. Victoria's being difficult about personal property, claiming things that were clearly Catherine's or family heirlooms. Having you there to identify your mother's things would help. The thought of Victoria claiming my mother's possessions made my decision easier. I'll come, but just for the day, to help sort Mom's things. That Saturday, I found myself standing outside a modern apartment building overlooking the city's revitalized riverfront. Dad had always loved water views, a preference I'd inherited. I took the elevator to the 7th floor and found the door to apartment 714 propped open with a moving box. Dad was kneeling by a bookcase, organizing engineering texts by topic as he had in his home office for as long as I could remember. He looked up when I knocked on the door frame, surprise and pleasure crossing his face. Rebecca, Eleanor didn't tell me you were coming. I wasn't sure I would until this morning, I admitted. She mentioned you needed help identifying Mom's things. Yes, thank you. Come in, please. He stood awkwardly, unsure whether to offer a hug or a handshake. I solved the dilemma by walking past him to inspect the apartment. It was smaller than I expected for a man who had lived in a sprawling colonial for the past decade, but the space was bright and open. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the river view, and the kitchen, while compact, featured new appliances and clean lines. "It's nice," I said, meaning it. "Very different from the house." "That's rather the point," Dad replied with a small smile. "Fresh start at 60. Not exactly how I planned to begin my retirement years. 60 is the new 40, or so they say." He showed me around quickly. The second bedroom had been set up as a home office, with boxes of files still to be unpacked. The master bedroom was spartanly furnished with just a bed and dresser. "Victoria's lawyers are fighting over every stick of furniture," he explained. "I decided to just take what was indisputably mine and buy new things as needed. Less baggage that way, literal and figurative." "What about Mom's things?" I asked. "Her artwork, her books, her jewelry?" "That's where I need your help. I've been going through photographs and keepsakes, trying to remember what was Catherine's originally. There's a storage unit with boxes I couldn't bear to go through after she died. I've never shown them to Victoria." The idea that Dad had preserved these connections to Mom, keeping them separate from his life with Victoria, touched something deep inside me. Perhaps he hadn't forgotten Mom as completely as I'd feared. We spent the next several hours sorting through photographs, letters, and mementos. Dad ordered lunch delivered, and we ate at his new kitchen counter, surrounded by piles of memories. "I forgot she made this," I said, holding up a ceramic bowl Mom had painted at one of those paint-your-own pottery places. It was lopsided but cheerfully decorated with sunflowers. "She was so proud of that bowl," Dad recalled, smiling. "Used it for popcorn on movie nights, even though kernels were always falling through that crack in the glaze. She said it had character." I remembered, running my finger along the imperfect rim. As the afternoon progressed, we fell into a rhythm, sharing memories as we sorted items into piles. Things for me to take, things for Dad to keep, things to photograph and then donate. It wasn't quite comfortable, but it wasn't the tense standoff of the coffee shop either. "Victoria's filed a countersuit," Dad mentioned as we packed the last box. "Claims I committed financial fraud by hiding assets and that you illegally accessed her private communications. Are you worried?"
No.
"My lawyer says her claims won't hold up, especially since the accounts she claims I hid were the same ones she was secretly transferring money from. As for the communications, there's no evidence you did anything illegal. The texts and photos came from cloud storage linked to my account, which I had legal access to." The conversation lulled as we finished packing. Dad closed the final box and labeled it carefully. "Thank you for coming today," he said, his voice slightly rough. "It means more than I can say." "I did it for Mom," I replied, not quite ready to admit I had also done it partly for him. "Of course." He nodded, accepting my boundary. "Would our Sunday call still work tomorrow? Or would that be too much after today?" 2 to 4, I confirmed. "I'll be expecting it." 2 weeks later, Dad called with news about his divorce proceedings. Victoria's claims had been largely dismissed, and the judge had granted a temporary order freezing additional assets pending final settlement. "My lawyer thinks we'll wrap up within 6 months," he explained. "Victoria's realizing her position isn't as strong as she thought, especially with the evidence of financial misconduct." "That's good news," I replied, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. "There's something else," Dad continued. "I've been seeing a therapist. Dr. Martin specializes in grief counseling. He's helping me understand how my unresolved grief over Catherine affected my relationship with you and made me vulnerable to Victoria's manipulation." This revelation stunned me into momentary silence. Dad had always dismissed therapy as paying strangers to listen to your problems. "That's really good, Dad. I'm seeing someone too in Seattle. I thought you might be. You seem more centered, if that makes sense. More sure of yourself." Our calls became a reliable fixture, every Sunday between 2 and 4. Sometimes they lasted only 15 minutes, sometimes the full 2 hours. We established new patterns of communication, learning how to talk to each other as adults without Victoria's interference. In the 3rd month after the birthday party incident, Dad attended a cybersecurity conference where I was presenting. I spotted him in the back row, listening intently as I explained blockchain vulnerabilities to a room full of industry professionals. He didn't approach afterward, respecting my professional space, but sent a text. Brilliant presentation. Went completely over my head, but could tell everyone else was impressed. Dinner if you're free? Over pasta at a nearby restaurant, he asked thoughtful questions about my work, demonstrating that he had actually been paying attention to my career path. When the check came, he proudly mentioned to the server, "My daughter is one of the leading experts in her field, you know." The casual pride in his voice healed something I hadn't realized was still broken. Our relationship continued to evolve in small, significant ways. Dad attended my industry awards ceremony the following month, sitting front row this time. I helped him navigate dating apps when he tentatively mentioned wanting companionship again, once his divorce was finalized. 6 months after the birthday party, I received a letter from Dad, handwritten on proper stationery. "Dear Rebecca," it began, "there are things I find easier to express in writing than in our conversations. First, I want to acknowledge specific regrets. Missing your graduation, forgetting your promotions, failing to defend you from Victoria's cruelty, and most unforgivably, allowing distance to grow between us after your mother died when you needed me most. Second, I want to make specific promises for our future relationship. I will listen more than I speak. I will celebrate your achievements rather than taking them for granted. I will never again allow anyone to come between us. I will respect your boundaries while always making clear that you are loved, valued, and a source of immense pride to me. I don't expect these words alone to heal the hurt I've caused. I understand that trust must be rebuilt through consistent actions over time. I am committed to that process for however long it takes, even if we never fully recover what was lost. With love and profound respect for the remarkable woman you've become, Dad." I kept that letter in my nightstand, rereading it on difficult days. Surprisingly, Melissa reached out around the 7-month mark with a brief, but sincere apology. "I believed what my mother told me about you for years," she wrote. "Now I'm questioning everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry for my part in how you were treated." We met for coffee, an awkward but not unpleasant experience that left the door open for a potential stepsister relationship independent of Victoria's toxic influence. Dad and I established a weekly dinner tradition, alternating between his apartment and mine after I moved back to town. He attended my therapy session once, at my invitation, where we worked through specific painful memories with Dr. Nelson's guidance. "I always thought being a good provider was enough," Dad admitted during that joint session. "That if I worked hard and created financial security, I was fulfilling my responsibilities as a father. I didn't understand that emotional presence was equally important." "And now," Dr. Nelson prompted, "now I understand that Rebecca needed her father, not just her father's paycheck. Especially after Catherine died. That failure is my greatest regret." 9 months after the party, Victoria finalized her divorce settlement, accepting far less than she had initially demanded after her lawyer advised that continuing to fight would likely result in criminal charges for financial fraud. She moved to Arizona shortly afterward, maintaining minimal contact with Melissa and none with Dad or me. Dad's health improved with a reduction in stress, his blood pressure returning to normal ranges without medication. He joined a hiking group for seniors and began volunteering at a science center, teaching engineering concepts to schoolchildren. With each month that passed, our new relationship strengthened, built on honest communication and mutual respect rather than obligation and avoidance. We didn't discuss the birthday party incident often, but its shadow gradually receded as new, positive memories took precedence. Watching Dad flourish in his new independence, I realized that Victoria's control had diminished him in ways neither of us had fully recognized until it was gone. The father I remembered from childhood, the one who had been buried under grief and manipulation, was re-emerging one day at a time. 1 year after the birthday party that changed everything, I hosted a small gathering at my newly purchased townhouse. The modest 2-bedroom with a tiny backyard represented a significant milestone. My first home purchased entirely on my own, a tangible symbol of my independence and success. Dad arrived precisely on time, a housewarming gift tucked under his arm. I did some research on traditional housewarming presents, he explained as I welcomed him in. Bread so you'll never go hungry, salt so your life will always have flavor, and honey so your home will be filled with sweetness. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, so different from the distracted gift cards of previous years, brought unexpected tears to my eyes.
Thank you, Dad.
That means a lot. My living room was already occupied by a small group of people who mattered most. Allison and her boyfriend, Aunt Eleanor, Grandmother Margaret, my colleague Frank and his wife, and to my surprise, Melissa, who had accepted my tentative invitation with grateful enthusiasm. Nice place, Dad commented, looking around appreciatively at the exposed brick walls and hardwood floors I'd fallen in love with. Good bones, as your mother would say. That's exactly why I bought it, I admitted. I could practically hear her voice when I first walked in. Dinner was served buffet style, everyone balancing plates on their laps as conversation flowed naturally. Dad spoke animatedly about his volunteer work, describing a particularly gifted 11-year-old who had redesigned their bridge building project. She reminds me of Rebecca at that age, he said, glancing at me with undisguised pride. Asking questions no one else thought to ask, seeing solutions where others saw problems. After dessert, I retrieved a small box I'd prepared for the occasion. I have something special planned, I announced. When I was growing up, Mom used to say that names have power, that what we call things and people shapes how we see them. I opened the box to reveal custom name tags, elegant ones unlike the party labels that had started our journey. I've created name tags for each of you, not with your names, but with the qualities I most value in you. I distributed them one by one. The loyal friend for Allison, the fearless truth-teller for Eleanor, the wise matriarch for Grandmother Margaret, the supportive colleague for Frank, and others that brought smiles and sometimes tears. Finally, I handed the last one to Dad. He looked down at it, his expression changing as he read, "The Resilient Father." "Do I deserve this?" he asked quietly for my ears only. "You're earning it every day," I replied honestly. Resilience isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up, creating something new from what's broken. Later, as guests were preparing to leave, Dad lingered behind, helping me load the dishwasher despite my protests that it could wait until morning. "I need to say something," he began as he carefully arranged wine glasses on the top rack. "That birthday party, as painful as it was, may have been the best thing that could have happened to both of us." "How so?" I asked, genuinely curious about his perspective. It forced a reckoning that was long overdue. The name tag Victoria chose was cruel, but in her cruelty, she inadvertently gave us a chance to rebuild what had been broken. Your courage in walking out, in leaving that USB drive, in demanding better for me, it woke me up. I considered his words, surprised to find I agreed. Sometimes the most painful moments lead to necessary change. My therapist calls it rupture and repair. The relationship breaks, but if both people are willing to do the work, what gets rebuilt can be stronger than what was lost. I wasn't willing to do the work for a long time, Dad admitted. I took the path of least resistance because facing the truth about Victoria, about my failures as a father, was too painful. I'm sorry it took something so dramatic to make me see what I was losing. I wasn't perfect either, I acknowledged. There were times I could have tried harder to communicate, times I assumed the worst about your intentions. You were the child. It wasn't your responsibility to manage our relationship. I'm not a child anymore. We're both adults now, responsible for our own choices and how we show up for each other. Dad nodded, finishing the last of the dishes. As he dried his hands, he said, "I almost forgot. I brought something else for you." He retrieved a small package from his jacket pocket. "I was going to save this for your birthday next month, but tonight seems right." I unwrapped it carefully to find the vintage Baldwin fishing lure I had purchased for his birthday a year ago, the gift I had never given him. "How did you know?" I asked, confused. "I found the receipt in your old bedroom when I was packing up the house. The date and store name were enough for me to track down what you'd bought." He smiled sheepishly. "I may have used some of those internet research skills you've been teaching me." I turned the lure over in my hand, remembering how excited I had been to give it to him, how certain I had been that it would create a moment of connection. I thought we might use it, Dad continued hesitantly. I've rented a cabin up at Lake Wilson for a weekend next month. Like the trips we used to take, if you're interested. No pressure, of course. The offer hung between us, a bridge extending from our past to a possible future. A year ago, I would have immediately assumed it would end in disappointment. Now, I found myself considering it with cautious optimism. I'd like that, I said finally. I can't promise I remember how to bait a hook, though. That's okay. Some things you never forget, and the rest we can figure out together. After Dad left, I sat in my new living room, surrounded by evidence of the life I had built for myself. On the mantel, I had placed a photo taken at my college graduation, my mother's arms around me, both of us beaming at the camera. Beside it now stood a newer photo, Dad and me at my industry awards ceremony, his face radiant with genuine pride. The journey from the disappointment to where I stood now hadn't been easy or straightforward. It had required courage to walk away, wisdom to establish boundaries, and eventually, grace to allow for reconciliation on new terms. It had meant acknowledging that people can change if they truly want to, while also accepting that some relationships can't and shouldn't be saved. Perhaps most importantly, I had learned that sometimes leaving something behind, whether a toxic relationship or old patterns of behavior, creates space for something better to grow in its place. The USB drive I left behind that night contained evidence of betrayal, but it also held the seeds of truth that ultimately set both Dad and me free. As you reflect on my story, I wonder if there are relationships in your own life that might need similar courage, whether to leave behind what's toxic or to rebuild what's worth saving. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved for your own well-being? Or found the strength to give a damaged relationship a second chance? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a like. Your support means everything and helps these stories reach others who might need to hear them. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most difficult endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.